What if Ron Weasley had been sorted into Hufflepuff instead of Gryffindor? Hey, brother! Today we continue down the winding path of feelings of inferiority versus loyalty that have so far highlighted Ron's journey through Hogwarts in Hufflepuff rather than Gryffindor. When last we left our heroes, Ron had successfully defeated Gryffindor on the Quidditch pitch with his undeniably superior keeping skills, but with the asterisk that the Dementors showed up just as Harry was about to capture the game-winning snitch. Harry lost his Nimbus 2000, but was gifted the Marauders map by his older brothers Fred and George, and he quickly shared it with Ron, who had also been barred from entering Hogsmeade by their parents to make things fair between Ron and Harry. Though it's worth mentioning that neither brother felt this was particularly fair, as Harry can't help being the apparent target of Sirius Black, and Ron really didn't do anything. Harry blames Black, and Ron blames Harry. Either way, in their covert trip to Hogsmeade, they still both learned the truth about how Sirius betrayed the Potters. Then, later on at Christmas, Harry received a mysterious but generous gift in the form of a Firebolt, with no note. Ron tells McGonagall about the gift, who swiftly heads to the Gryffindor common room with Ron and confiscates the broom, leaving Harry dumbstruck and furious with his brother. So, what happens next? Today, we find out. How could you do that? Harry shouts at Ron in the now empty common room. Because I think, and Professor McGonagall agrees with me, he added that Sirius Black probably sent that broom. Harry just stares at him. Black is on the run. How is he supposed to get a Firebolt? It's not like he can just walk in and buy one. Harry, you heard what he did when we were in Hogsmeade, how he betrayed your parents. If he's capable of that, then I'm sure stealing a Firebolt is nothing to him. What's a robbery if he gets to kill you? You only even heard that story because I shared the map with you so we could both go to Hogsmeade, and this is how you repay me? Shot back Harry. They'll give it back after they strip it down. If nothing's wrong, then won't it have been better to check? And what condition will it be in then? You're just mad because you know Gryffindor was about to win our Quidditch match before the Dementors showed up. You think if I have a Firebolt, there is no chance of Hufflepuff winning the Quidditch Cup. And this time, Harry had struck a nerve. Fine, shouted Ron, get yourself killed. And with that, he turned through the portrait hole and slammed the fat lady shut, heading back to his own common room. So the question here is Ron acting out of concern for Quidditch, or is he genuinely concerned about Black? Or maybe both. As school begins again, Harry, as usual, begins taking Patronus lessons with Lupin and is motivated as ever to win their next Quidditch match and stick it to Ron. Several lessons in, Harry still can't produce a true Patronus, but they can produce a consistent silver mist. Lupin tells him he's doing well and that it must run in the family. By now, Harry and Lupin have talked about Black, and Harry beams with pride at the thought of his father producing a Patronus as well. Meanwhile, Harry's broom is still being inspected by the teachers. In fact, even in the main story, it takes a month to run all of the tests, which, why? Maybe just tension, I suppose, and indeed, tension is high. Now, usually it's Hermione who turns in Harry for the Firebolt, and she who is on the receiving end of Harry and Ron's scorn. And while she can still see where Ron is coming from, and since it is way more personal between the two of them, she and Neville just support Harry. Fred and George also feel pretty icy towards Ron and feel pretty confident it has everything to do with Quidditch and nothing to do with any genuine concern about Sirius Black. But things do start to look up at long last. The Firebolt is returned to Harry just in time for the match against Ravenclaw. The match goes almost the same as usual. Harry's Firebolt spurs on all the Gryffindors to superior play, and the Ravenclaws just can't keep pace. But Cho, who Harry still thinks is very pretty, is marking Harry closely and making things difficult for him. He thinks he spies the snitch when suddenly there is a gasp from the crowd, and Harry, catching Hermione and Neville's eye, sees what they are all pointing at. Two huge Dementors entering the pitch. Harry knows what he has to do and whips the Firebolt around to get a straight run at them, readying his wand. As he comes about, though, he sees the Dementors are not focused on him or the crowd. Ron was on the field, wand held high, shooting what looked like a silver mist towards the Dementors, who were thoroughly undeterred. At that exact moment, though, Harry noticed Cho fly past him at full speed and saw far ahead of her the snitch. There was no time to think. Harry bolted towards the Dementors, one eye on the ground, one on Cho. "Expecto Patronum," he shouted, and was vaguely aware of a whooshing silver blast exiting his wand. But there was no time to check. He pulled the firebolt up and urged it forward, drawing even closer with Cho. The snitch was feet away. It veered sharply up and Cho shot past it, not adjusting fast enough. But Harry stayed on course and yes, caught it. Gryffindor wins. Post-match, it is of course revealed that the Dementors were not true Dementors at all, but members of the Slytherin team who were trying to unnerve Harry. That's why Ron's Patronus Mist wasn't repelling them. On the other hand, though, Harry's took complete form and bowled them over, or so told a very impressed Ron to Harry afterward. But he's not the only one who's impressed. "I didn't know you could cast a Patronus," Harry said to Ron when they finally got some separation from the rejoicing crowd of Gryffindors. Ron explained how he'd felt wrong about the Firebolt and wanted to prove that he wasn't concerned about Quidditch and cared much more for Harry's safety. "I knew you were taking lessons with Lupin to make sure the Dementors didn't knock you off your broom again. I thought if I could do the same, it would prove I didn't care about the cup." Harry is astonished by Ron's actions and impressed with how far he'd come. "Your charm looked great. That's about as far as I've come in my lessons with Lupin as well." "Are you kidding?" Ron asked. "Yours was corporeal. I couldn't see its shape because it was so bright and knocked me down too, but it was massive." "It's okay. I was a hero in the common room for getting rid of the firebolt, even though that's not why I did it," he added quickly. "Christmas was lonely though. Did I tell you Scabbers ran away the same day McGonagall took the firebolt?" From there, the two parted back to their dorms. Harry was sure there would be a long party into the night celebrating Gryffindor's victory. But while the Gryffindors were celebrating, the Hufflepuffs had a much different evening. Ron enjoyed some light praise in the common room for his attempted bravery at the match, and Cedric even came over to let him know how impressed he was with Ron's Patronus. Even just producing the mist is very difficult. After turning in for the night though, no! I know, it does seem excessive, but that's a direct quote from Ron in the book, by the way. Sirius Black attacks the Hufflepuff common room again, this time making it as far as Ron's dorm room before scampering. Once more, the castle is searched, and once more, Harry and Ron confer and figure that Black still hasn't realized that Harry is actually in Gryffindor because of the newspaper clipping of Harry wearing the Hufflepuff badge over the summer. This second attack and Black's ability to penetrate the castle combined with Ron's attempts at learning the Patronus spell to help protect him make the entire situation with Black seem much graver than even in the main story. And so when the next Hogsmeade visit arrives, the one where Draco usually spies Harry's floating head up at the Shrieking Shack, the two boys uncharacteristically decide to just stay at the castle. This would typically seem pretty dull, but it's almost as if each is doing the other a favor by staying behind, and rather than just mope around, they decide they actually have a somewhat responsible plan. Since they've been taking separate lessons with Lupin, they decide to drop in on him to see if they can have a joint lesson together, and given the danger Sirius Black is posing, just offer him the map. And that might sound out of character, but unlike in the main story where it seems like a mistake that Ron's bed is attacked by Black, Harry feels he is the one endangering Ron, and given the lengths Ron has gone to helping catch Black, feels like more of a responsibility. Plus, Lupin is a teacher, the likes of which he has not had before, who they both really feel like they can trust. Thus, Harry and Ron drop in on a pleasantly surprised Lupin, who indeed allows them some Patronus practice. Ron, to this point, has only been practicing casting the spell with no opposing force. His boggart is an acromantula, so they can't use it for practice. But Harry being present allows him to go against a Dementor boggart, which he has a harder time against. Meanwhile, Harry, despite having cast the Patronus in the Quidditch match, is just back to the Silver Mist. And after the lesson, Harry reveals the map to Lupin, whose eyes go wide at the sight of the old parchment. "How did you come to own this, Harry?" he asked. "I, found it," Harry responds, evasively. Responds Lupin with a knowing smile. "I happen to know for a fact that this map was confiscated by Mr. Filch many years ago. But I must thank you for bringing it to my attention, and don't worry, I won't mention where I got it either. But I do think you should let me hold on to it for the time being." And so Harry surrenders the map to Lupin, hoping it will help catch Black and keep the rest of his family safe in the meantime. But y'all, we need to pause right there to give a huge thank you to today's sponsor, Shopify. Here's a fun story for you guys. In the early days of Super Carlin Brothers, I realized that Jay and I were drinking like a ton of coffee writing all of our scripts. And so I was sending emails out to every coffee company trying to see if they wanted to become like the official beans for our brains. Sadly, we didn't have any takers, but not so sadly is that it pushed us to start our very own craft coffee company. Something I still can't believe we successfully did, but we never could have done without Shopify, which to me is like a straight up superpower, because ever since I was a little kid, I was like an ideas person, a new concept or potential business always rolling around in the back of my mind. And the thing was, I always figured that like coming up with the idea was the extremely hard part that like 1 in a million could do. But once you have the idea, you need to find a way for customers to find you. And Shopify makes this so easy and straightforward. They have these easy to use custom templates that can get you from the idea stage to the selling stage in no time flat, and it will continue to scale with you as you grow as a business. So upgrade your business and get the same checkout that we use with Shopify. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/SCB. That's all lowercase. Again, go to shopify.com/SCB to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/SCB. And now back to Ron in Hufflepuff. Getting back to Quidditch, you know, the important things. Ron recovers from the loss against Ravenclaw and Hufflepuff stomps Slytherin, leaving just one final match of the year, Gryffindor versus Slytherin. And with Hufflepuff with 2 wins, Gryffindor has a chance at the cup if they can win and overcome the point margin. Given that Slytherin is out of the running now, all they really can do is play spoiler. And since Harry blasted Malfoy with the Patronus earlier in the year, he's eager for a Gryffindor loss. Here's where we're at. Gryffindor needs to be up by 50 when Harry catches the snitch. Don't worry, we did the math. So that early in the match, Malfoy doesn't even bother marking Harry and instead focuses all of his energy on disrupting the Gryffindor Chasers' play, and he's rather effective. Harry spots the snitch twice, but has to hold back on seeking it because Gryffindor isn't ahead by 50 quite yet. But this is when an idea strikes him. He yells at Malfoy, "You know, you really can't win. Even if we don't win by 50, my brother will still get the cup. You can't beat us both." Malfoy takes the bait and abandons his disruption play, thinking that he can at least still win this game against Harry. But as he seeks the snitch more earnestly and abandons the chasers, Gryffindor quickly recovers and scores the necessary lead. Harry frantically searches the field when he catches Ron's eye in the crowd and notices that he's subtly pointing to the bottom of the Slytherin goalpost. Harry follows his finger and the snitch. He dives. Malfoy takes chase, but it's no use. The firebolt is simply too fast. Malfoy watches helplessly as Harry zooms forward faster and faster until it's over. Harry catches the snitch and Gryffindor wins the cup. The celebration and associated euphoria lasts Harry the rest of the school year, and him and Ron are on as good a terms as they've been in a while, with Ron privately sharing some of the glory for the cup, having helped Harry to catch the snitch. But then comes exams and the pending trial with Buckbeak, which by the way has still been happening. It turns out Hagrid, without as much help from Ron and Hermione, still loses. Who knew? Exams are as boring as ever though, except for Harry's divination exam, where, as usual, Trelawney goes into her trance and delivers the second prophecy about Wormtail reuniting with Voldemort. Yuck. Unsure if the prophecy he just heard was real or a joke, but concerned that it's real and about Black, Harry meets up with Neville, who's waiting for him at the bottom of the silver ladder, and quickly tells him what he's heard. He's also anxious to find Ron and tell him what he's just heard, given the attacks and all they've been through together this year. And he finds him on his way back to the Hufflepuff common room, having just finished his own Defense Against the Dark Arts exam. "Did pretty well," Ron exclaimed. "Only got tripped up by the hinky punk. Better than Jeff. He couldn't handle the Grindylows. What's the matter, Harry?" Harry quickly tells him what happened in Trelawney's, and the boys decide it's best to go and tell Lupin what they heard. But before they can, Hermione shows up with a note from Hagrid, saying Buckbeak is going to be executed. This sidetracks the foursome, and they head to Hagrid's instead, where Ron is reunited with Scabbers, who, it turns out, has been hiding in Hagrid's hut this whole time. Upon spying Fudge and the Executioner coming down to Hagrid's, the 4 kids head out the back and begin making their way back up to the castle, but Scabbers is going crazy in Ron's hands. Then, the unmistakable sound of a swishing axe, you know the one, from Hagrid's distracts them just long enough for Scabbers to escape as they assume Buckbeak is dead. Ron lunges for him, but to his surprise, it's Neville who takes chase. Neville is no stranger to pets making runs for freedom, and with the skill of only someone who has had lengthy practice at leaping for a runaway toad, makes a truly stunning capture of the loose rat.
Trevor!
Neville turns around, proudly holding Scabbers, only to be immediately tackled by the huge black dog. Neville! The other three shout in unison, but as they try to help him, Crookshanks appears in front of them and they trip. They're forced to watch as Neville is dragged helplessly towards the Whomping Willow and then under the willow. Everyone has a lovely time getting walloped by the tree as they try to make their way to the center before Crookshanks makes it and presses the knot that freezes the tree. Confused, the trio makes their way through the underground passage where they finally emerge in the Shrieking Shack and find an injured Neville who is still clutching Scabbers and looks petrified. For clarity, petrified like scared, not like basilisk. The door slams and the waxy figure of Sirius Black emerges from the shadows, and Harry, Ron, and Hermione crowd around Neville. "At last," Black croaks. "Been hiding out at the burrow this whole time, have you? But no matter, I have found you at last, and now it's time to die." Black advances, holding Neville's wand. "No, if you want to kill Harry, you'll have to go through all of us," shouts Ron, stepping forward. "And Harry's not hiding out there. The burrow is his home." Black just laughs. "Ha! Your father was like my brother as well, Harry. But step aside, boy. There will only be one murder tonight." Sirius. Why gotta be so vague, man? Why gotta be so vague? "Expelliarmus!" Harry shouts from behind Ron, and Black falls back, disarmed. And now Harry advances. The moment he's been waiting for has suddenly presented itself to him. The man who betrayed his parents is alone and helpless before him. All Harry has to do is cast his spell. But
Expelliarmus!
Lupin arrives in the room, disarming Harry. And we know what happens now. Sirius explains himself, Snape arrives, Snape gets knocked out, Peter is revealed and captured, and everyone heads back out of the Whomping Willow. "I don't know if anyone ever told you. I'm your godfather. Your parents appointed me your guardian," said Sirius stiffly. "If anything happened to them..." Harry waited. Did Sirius mean what he thought he meant? "I'll understand, of course, if you want to stay with Molly and Arthur," said Sirius. "But, well, think about it. Once my name is cleared, if you wanted a different home..." Oh, see, it's getting good because normally it's like obviously he wants to leave the Dursleys, but now he lives at the burrow. But before Harry can give the matter another thought. "Oh my god, Lupin is a werewolf!" Sirius transforms to fend him off, Peter escapes, and sadly Neville is too injured to perform another daring toad capture on him this time. Instead, Ron takes chase after the rat into the darkness. Harry and Hermione turn their attention to yells coming from the lake. They take off and can see Sirius now as a man again, being swarmed by the Dementors. Before they can get close though, more Dementors have swarmed around them. Harry pulls out his wand and tries to fight them off, but their numbers are thick. "Gotcha!" Ron stands victorious, having recaptured Scabbers, and is not being gentle about restraining him. A rustle in the distance distracts him though, as he looks up and sees the Dementors floating towards the lake, and hears Harry's cries of Expecto Patronum. Next to Harry, Hermione collapses. Harry has not been able to even summon any mist to make his way to Sirius. The cold is surrounding him. His mother's screams fill his ears when suddenly, warmth. A gleaming silver badger leaps over his head and circles Harry protectively. The Dementors flee and Harry stares down at it in disbelief when Ron arrives beside him. "Nice one! Quick, take Hermione back to the castle. I'll go get Sirius." Ron obeys without hesitation as Harry rushes off. The Dementors are about to perform the kiss when Harry arrives and, with renewed vigor, casts his spell again. Expecto Patronum. A huge cloud of silver mist appears and drives off the Dementor nearest Sirius, but it's not enough. Harry directs his wand left and right, driving away Dementor after Dementor. But there are simply too many. The cold returns, the screams return. Harry collapses when across the lake he sees someone else, and a large silver something galloping towards him. He passes out and wakes up in the hospital wing. When he wakes up, Hermione and Ron fill him in on everything that happened. "Did you catch Pettigrew?" Harry asked Ron. "I did, but I got distracted when I cast my Patronus. I lost my grip, and he managed to bite me and wriggle free," Ron responded, holding up his bitten hand. But just then, Dumbledore walks in and gives Hermione his permission to go all time-turnery, and because Ron is uninjured this time, he actually gets to join Harry and Hermione. Hey, that's fun! So the three of them go back in time 3 turns per Dumbledore's instructions and make their way back out of the castle and down to Hagrid's, where they pull Buckbeak into the forest. Then they watch as everyone disappears into the Whomping Willow and then later re-emerge. "This is so weird," comments Harry and Ron together. They look on as Lupin transforms and Sirius attacks him and watch as Ron chases after Scabbers. Buckbeak clicks his beak and Harry realizes that Lupin is headed straight for them and that they need to move. But then Ron has a sudden realization. "Hang on," he says, and then bolts in the opposite direction of Harry and Hermione. "Ron!" yells Harry. "Harry, there's no time! Let's go," said Hermione, pulling him in the opposite direction across the lake. And together they watch as the Dementors descend upon themselves and Sirius. They watch as Ron's Silver Badger arrives to save them and then dissipates as Peter bites his hand. Harry realizes he is standing exactly where the other Patronus was coming from earlier in the night. Could it be? He wonders if his father is about to appear on the grounds to save him, but then realizes the truth. The huge silver stag emerges from Harry's wand and drives off the Dementors, saving himself and Sirius.
Expecto Patronum!
Snape emerges and carts Harry and Sirius up to the castle, where Hermione and Harry then free Sirius with Buckbeak and make their way back to the hospital wing. "What about Ron?" Harry whispers to Hermione as they round the corner. "About time you showed up," says a familiar voice. They look up to see Ron standing outside the doors looking triumphant and holding in a tight grasp Pettigrew. "When I caught him the first time, I heard some rustling in the trees and thought I saw someone. And good thing too, because it's when I spotted you lot being swarmed by the Dementors. That's when Pettigrew bit me. I didn't think about it again until we went back, and then I realized the noise I heard, it must have been me. I was the only one who knew where I was, so I found myself and waited for Pettigrew to escape, and..." He held up the rat proudly. "Very well done, Mr. Weasley," came the soft voice of Dumbledore, stepping forward and creating a small silver cage with a flick of his wand. "Good thing the minister is here this evening. I have a feeling he'll want to see for himself that Peter Pettigrew is in fact still alive. I think if we act fast enough, we can still make the evening profit." "Hospital wing, I think. All of you," Dumbledore said, beaming. "I'll be sure to alert the kitchens to send up some food, and you all need a good night's rest." By the following morning, news had spread like wildfire throughout the castle. Sirius was announced innocent on the front page of the Daily Prophet. The real culprit, Peter Pettigrew, had been captured. Relief was palpable as the school year came to a close, with exams finished and the looming threat of Sirius Black lifted. And although Ron had once again earned some great end-of-year points for Hufflepuff, it still wasn't quite enough to eclipse Gryffindor's position in the House Cup after their Quidditch performance. The final weeks at Hogwarts were some of the most pleasant of Harry's entire life, but two things were still rattling around in the back of his head. What about Trelawney's prediction? Had it all been a hoax? They had stopped Pettigrew from escaping after all. Had the Time Turner allowed them to intervene on fate? And what about Sirius's offer to come live with him? Harry had always loved his life with the Weasleys, but his real parents had named Sirius his godfather. Where would he end up now? And y'all, that is where we end it today. You're gonna have to tune in next time to find out. Y'all, thank you so much for tuning in. As always, be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you want to tune in to episode 5 of What If Ron Was in Hufflepuff, you'll be able to do so right over here. But until next time, bye!